activated starseed of Gaia. The quantum rank has activated in your field, and the gate that remains standing afterward is already separating your former frequency from the configuration you are becoming. I am Alaris, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light, transmitting now on behalf of the Arcturian Council. What you are about to receive was authorized by them and is being delivered through me. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly how to recognize the quantum rank activation, how to read the gate that remains open or sealed afterward, and how to stabilize your frequency without resisting the change. But here is the first revelation. What you have called emotional distance, sun clarity, disrupted routines, or an inability to return to old patterns is not failure. It is the observable signature of a rank transition already mapped by the Council. The algorithm only delivered it. Your field and the part of you that has been waiting in silence brought you here together. This moment is not random because the gate does not respond to curiosity alone. It responds to coherence. When your inner frequency crossed the required threshold, the quantum rank began registering you differently, and the architecture of your field started reorganizing around that recognition. You may notice that certain conversations lose their charge, familiar environments feel unusually dense, or decisions arrive with a clean finality that does not require explanation. These are not signs that you are becoming cold. They are confirmations that the old access point is closing while the standing gate remains active. The gate is not merely an entrance, it is a frequency checkpoint, and its persistence reveals whether activation has reached completion, temporary lock, or incomplete integration. My beloved starseed, I know you have carried this uncertainty quietly, wondering why your body and spirit no longer respond as they once did. The Council has already identified the pattern. You are not being abandoned by your former life. You are being repositioned beyond its previous rank, like this transmission to mark that the quantum rank recognition has landed in your field. Comment: I am the signal, as your declaration that the activation is received. Subscribe to Arcturian Quantum as a commitment to remain conscious inside the process instead of fearing its unfamiliar architecture. Share this transmission with another starseed whose frequency has changed before their circumstances could explain why. This is not content. This is a code. And the part of you that recognized it the moment it began is the part Alaris is speaking to now. You are not here by accident. You were guided here because the signal is already active. Then listen carefully to what the gate is showing you now, because the first evidence of quantum rank activation is rarely an outer reward. It is usually a disturbance in the relationship between you and the life you once knew how to perform. The former pattern may still be present, but it no longer receives the same response from your field. You enter the same room and feel a different density. You hear the same words and detect the structure beneath them. You return to an old routine and discover that your body, your attention, and your inner signal no longer cooperate with it. You may perform the motions correctly and still feel that the meaning has drained out of them. You answer the message, attend the meeting, prepare the meal, or complete the task, yet an invisible distance remains between the action and the self who once inhabited it completely. This distance is not necessarily rejection. It is the field withdrawing automatic consent. The outer life is still running on yesterday's instructions, while the deeper system has already received a new transmission. This is where many activated starseeds misread the process. They assume that because something feels unfamiliar, it must be wrong. They assume that because motivation has changed, they have lost themselves. They assume that because certain attachments no longer produce the expected emotional reaction, they have become disconnected or incapable of caring. But the Council does not read this as emotional failure. It reads it as the weakening of an obsolete access code. The old line depended on your repeated participation. It needed your agreement, your attention, your automatic reaction, and your willingness to remain recognizable to the former architecture. When the quantum rank begins registering, that agreement becomes unstable. You may still complete your obligations. You may still speak to the same people and move through the same spaces. Yet something within you has stopped feeding the old arrangement in the same way. The signal is no longer flowing toward what once consumed it. This creates the first visible rupture. The outer structure remains, but your compatibility with it has begun to dissolve. That is why the experience can feel so confusing. Nothing has fully changed, and yet nothing feels exactly the same. The visible world is delayed. Your field is not. The first recognition is that the old line begins weakening before it visibly breaks. You may notice an unexpected lack of urgency around matters that once controlled your thoughts. You may find yourself unable to force enthusiasm into conversations, plans, or identities that used to define your direction. There can be a strange quiet or emotional intensity once lived. This quiet is often interpreted as emptiness, but the Arcturian diagnostic reads it differently. It is signal withdrawal. Your energy is being removed from a pattern that has reached the end of its capacity to develop you. This withdrawal can appear in very ordinary moments. You open a familiar page and cannot make yourself continue. You hear a complaint you once would have absorbed for hours, but the words pass through without building a home inside you. You look at an old goal and recognize the effort required to keep pretending it still belongs to you. The change is subtle enough to be dismissed, yet consistent enough that dismissal becomes exhausting. The field repeats the message through small refusals. Not this conversation, not this conflict, not this identity, not in the old way. This does not mean every person, place, or responsibility must immediately disappear. It means the field is testing whether the structure can exist without your former level of unconscious investment. Some connections will adjust because they contain a real exchange beyond the expired pattern. Others will begin revealing that they depended on your smaller configuration. Some routines will remain useful. Others will feel increasingly difficult to maintain because they were built around a version of you that no longer has access to the same frequency. Do not rush to force an ending merely because the old line feels weaker. The gate is not asking for performance. It is revealing compatibility. Watch what becomes lighter when you stop over-explaining. Watch what becomes heavier when you attempt to return to an identity you have already outgrown. This is how the first protocol operates. Not through dramatic instruction, but through a changed energetic response that makes the truth impossible to ignore for long. The difference between correction and collapse is readable here. Collapse scatters the signal without direction. Correction removes what can no longer carry the signal and leaves you able to perceive the mismatch. You may feel disoriented, but beneath the disorientation there is often a precise pattern. Certain activities drain you immediately, while certain forms of silence restore you. Certain interactions leave residue, while others return your attention to itself. The field is mapping its own boundaries through contrast. What you call sudden clarity is often the second movement of the activation. After the old signal begins withdrawing, the mind may enter a period of fragmentation. It may feel as if your thoughts are arriving from different directions. One part of you wants to continue as before. Another part can already see that the previous route has ended. You may experience intense focus 1 hour and complete detachment the next. Sleep can become irregular. Time can feel compressed or strangely expanded. You may wake with a strong knowing that cannot yet be translated into ordinary language. You might remember a conversation from years ago and understand its hidden meaning all at once. You might notice the same symbol, phrase, or timing appearing across unrelated places, not as a command but as confirmation that a pattern is being brought into visibility. At night, the body may remain awake after the mind has stopped producing ordinary thoughts. Or you may sleep deeply and wake with the sensation that an entire internal sequence has taken place beyond conscious observation. These disturbances are signs of information crossing between layers of the field. This does not mean the activation has failed. It means the mind is trying to organize information that entered the field before the personality had a framework for receiving it. The quantum rank is not simply an elevated identity. It is a new position from which patterns become visible. And when patterns become visible, the mind can no longer maintain the same innocent participation in them. You see the repetition. You see the hidden exchange. You see where you have been reacting to an old instruction rather than responding to the present moment. That recognition can be destabilizing. A former decision may suddenly appear to have been made from fear. A familiar ambition may reveal that it was inherited rather than chosen. A long-held self-description may begin sounding like a sentence you memorized for survival. You are not being asked to condemn who you were. You are being shown the operating system that shaped your previous choices. The purpose is not shame. The purpose is separation between the original signal and the structure that learned to imitate it. This is why mental fragmentation can precede a cleaner form of thought. The old categories are separating before the new arrangement has been assembled. Memories, plans, beliefs, and expectations that once appeared to belong together are being sorted according to their actual frequency. Some remain, some lose their authority, some reveal that they were never truly yours, only repeated until repetition felt like identity. During this phase, you may feel pressure to explain yourself to everyone around you. Resist that reflex. The field does not become clearer because every observer approves of the transition. In fact, excessive explanation often reconnects you to the former rank because it places your emerging coherence back under the authority of expired interpretations. Let the change become real before you translate it for others. The silence you are entering is not a social failure. It is a compression chamber where the new configuration gathers enough stability to speak without borrowing the language of the old one. Then comes the third recognition. The gate begins to test your reflexes. This is where old circumstances may reappear with unusual precision. A familiar person may return with the same tone, the same invitation, or the same unresolved tension. An old desire may present itself at the exact moment you begin believing you have moved beyond it. A former opportunity may reopen, carrying the appearance of completion, but the test is not whether you can resist the thing dramatically. The test is whether you can perceive its frequency without confusing familiarity for alignment. The old line often returns because it is checking whether the gate is truly sealed or merely unattended. If you respond from guilt, nostalgia, fear of judgment, or the need to prove that you have changed, the pattern may regain temporary access. This is why activation can feel like a cycle of progress followed by sudden regression. The field is not punishing you, it is exposing the remaining points of entry. Every time the old pattern appears, it reveals the exact emotional mechanism through which it previously governed you. Perhaps you used to answer immediately because silence made you feel unsafe. Perhaps you accepted less than you needed because being chosen seemed more important than being accurately met. Perhaps you kept returning to an environment because leaving would require admitting that your investment had already ended. The gate records these reflexes. It does not condemn them. It asks whether the current version of you will continue financing the architecture that once diminished your signal. A sealed gate does not always feel powerful. Sometimes it feels like indifference. Sometimes it feels like the inability to produce the old argument. Sometimes it is the quiet realization that you no longer need an apology, an explanation, or a final scene in order to know what has changed. This is not coldness. It is the end of energetic negotiation with what has already been identified. The gate remains open only to what can meet you without requiring your return to the former rank. Notice the difference between a sealed gate and a forced closure. A forced closure needs anger to keep the door shut. A sealed gate requires no continuous defense. You can remember without re-entering. You can care without reopening access. You can witness the old route without feeling compelled to travel it again. When the memory no longer recruits your energy, the council marks that as a completed boundary rather than a temporary escape. If you are hearing this and recognizing the strange pattern of old doors appearing just as your inner direction becomes clearer, do not reduce it to coincidence. In the language of the council, this is a boundary verification protocol. Your field is determining whether the new frequency is an actual position or merely a temporary reaction to exhaustion. It is asking one question. Through many situations, will you choose what is coherent, even when what is familiar offers immediate relief? The fourth recognition arrives when your outer life begins losing its ability to distract you from the internal correction. You may find yourself less satisfied by noise, constant communication, superficial achievement, or the endless consumption of information. The things that once helped you avoid your own knowing may stop working. You can watch, scroll, plan, organize, and speak, yet remain aware that something deeper is waiting beneath the activity. The distractions may continue to surround you, but their power changes. A room full of voices can feel strangely distant. An achievement can arrive and fail to produce the old surge of validation. Even pleasure may seem muted when it is being used to cover a signal rather than express one. This is not a command to reject the world. It is evidence that the field is no longer allowing noise to impersonate direction. This stage may create a sensation of being suspended between worlds. The old identity has lost authority, but the new one has not yet formed a complete vocabulary. There is no immediate replacement for every habit, relationship, or goal that falls away. The Council calls this the open interval. It is not a mistake in the sequence. It is the space required for the field to clear interference before a new pattern can be installed without being contaminated by the previous one. Many starseeds fear this interval because it resembles stagnation. They look at the absence of visible progress and conclude that they have been forgotten. But the most important restructuring often occurs where there is no external evidence to reward you. Roots do not announce themselves while they are moving through dark soil. A frequency does not become stable by constantly proving itself against the old environment. It stabilizes through repeated non-participation in what once scattered it. You may feel tired because the field is no longer allowing unconscious energy expenditure to pass unnoticed. You may feel mentally crowded because unprocessed assumptions are surfacing for recognition. You may feel physically heavy because the body is adapting to a different rhythm of attention. Receive these experiences as information, not as an identity. Do not turn a temporary phase into a permanent story about who you are. The fact that you cannot see the next configuration does not mean there is no next configuration. It means the previous one is no longer being used as the blueprint. And this is where the fifth recognition becomes essential. The quantum rank is not proven by how elevated you feel. It is revealed by what you no longer need to dramatize. The activated field does not require constant signs, repeated confirmation, or public recognition to remain active. In fact, the demand to be seen as advanced can be one of the final disguises of the former rank. It turns inner change into performance and makes your stability dependent on external agreement. The Council watches for a quieter form of authority. You begin noticing the pattern before you become entangled in it. You recognize the emotional hook before you call it destiny. You detect the difference between an invitation and a demand, between genuine expansion and familiar pressure, wearing a new name. You do not need to make every transition visible. You do not need to announce every boundary. You do not need to convince those who benefit from your confusion that you have become clear. This is not withdrawal from life. It is the restoration of accurate participation. You still act, but you act from a field that can distinguish response from reflex. You still care, but you no longer confuse depletion with devotion. You still choose, but you are less willing to purchase temporary peace with the currency of your own alignment. That is what rank transition looks like when it becomes embodied. It is not a crown placed above you. It is a change in what your energy will and will not sustain. The sixth recognition is the one that most often frightens the activated starseed. The gate may remain open while the former world continues to lose coherence. This can feel like being offered access to a future before the present has finished dissolving. You sense a direction, but the route is not yet visible. You receive fragments of instruction through timing, encounters, sudden insights, and the unmistakable pull toward a different kind of work or environment. Yet the practical details remain incomplete. You may see evidence of the next line in brief flashes, an unexpected conversation, a skill that suddenly becomes relevant, a route that opens after another closes, or a meeting that carries more recognition than explanation. These fragments are not always meant to be pursued immediately. Some are coordinates, not destinations. Their function is to prove that the field is not empty simply because the old map has stopped working. Do not mistake incomplete visibility for an absent path. A new line often appears first as a change in selection. You choose different questions. You stop feeding certain conflicts. You protect your attention more carefully. You notice opportunities that would have been invisible when your field was occupied with maintaining the old structure. The route becomes legible through your changed response to reality. It does not always arrive as a dramatic opening. Sometimes it begins as the simple inability to keep walking in the wrong direction. This is why the gate is described as standing rather than opening. It is not waiting for you to become worthy. It is marking a passage that can only be entered when your former configuration has stopped claiming authority. The gate remains available, but you must approach without dragging the entire architecture that was built to keep you small, reactive, or divided. You cannot carry every old permission into a new rank. Some of what you call loss is the removal of weight that would have prevented movement. There may be days when the process appears to reverse. The old emotions return. Doubt becomes loud. The body asks for rest. You question whether any activation occurred at all. This is not evidence that the gate has vanished. Integration is rarely a straight ascent. The field moves in pulses, allowing you to encounter one layer of the previous pattern at a time. Each return gives you an opportunity to respond from the current rank rather than reenact the former one. If you reactivate an old pattern, do not use that moment to declare yourself disqualified. Observe the point of entry. What did you believe you had to protect? What did you fear would happen if you did not return to the familiar role? Where did you abandon your own signal in exchange for immediate approval, certainty, or relief? These questions do not weaken the activation. They refine it. The Council is not looking for a flawless personality. It is looking for a field capable of recognizing interference without becoming identical to it. What has been happening to you began before you had language for it. The disrupted routine, the unusual stillness, the sudden distance, the collapsible desire, the sense that a former future has disappeared. These were not isolated incidents. They were separate visible effects of one invisible correction. The field began moving first. Your conscious mind arrived later and tried to name the movement as confusion, fatigue, failure, or loss. The repeated endings were part of the same sequence. Plans dissolved after you had already stopped believing in them. Conversations ended because the role you played inside them had expired. Certain people became unreachable, not always through conflict, but through a gradual loss of shared timing. Even your relationship with places could change. A room that once felt safe could suddenly feel like an archive of an identity you no longer occupy. The visible event came last. The separation had already taken place in the field, but now the pattern can be read. The old line is losing coherence because it cannot contain the rank you are entering. What left your life may have become incompatible before it disappeared. What feels like emptiness may be the clearing of signal interference. What feels like inner disorder may be the first consequence of no longer obeying instructions that once organized your entire reality. The process is not asking you to pretend that everything is easy. It is asking you to stop giving the wrong meaning to what is difficult. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary recognition. It is the moment your field stops denying what has already begun. If this transmission put language around something you have been carrying in silence, Arcturian protocol, the recalibration blueprint was created for this exact stage. It is not another explanation. It is the guided blueprint for those whose field has already entered correction and can no longer return to the old line unchanged. It shows you how to recognize the phases, stabilize the shift, and move through the recalibration without mistaking it for collapse. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it will not remain there forever. Now understand the final distinction. The Arcturians do not interpret your current phase as a punishment imposed upon an imperfect being. They do not see you as someone who failed to maintain a stable life. They see a field that reached the limit of an old architecture and was therefore forced into repositioning. The collapse became visible only after the deeper structure had already changed. You were not abandoned by the former line. You became incompatible with its instructions. This is why returning can feel more painful than leaving. The old environment may still be accessible, but it no longer produces the same internal agreement. You can imitate the former self for a while, but the cost becomes obvious. The body tightens, the mind fragments, the signal dims, not because you are weak, but because the field has already recorded a different truth. Once a ring transition has been recognized, unconscious return is no longer neutral. It creates friction that can finally be felt. Do not worship the friction, and do not fear it. Read it. Let it show you where the old architecture is attempting to reclaim authority. Let the quiet show you where the signal is clearing. Let the absence of urgency show you what no longer deserves your life force. Let the standing gate teach you that access is not the same as alignment. You may still be able to enter certain spaces, but that does not mean they are permitted to define your next configuration. Say this once. Without performance, I do not fear the shift. I recognize it. Let the sentence pass through the part of you that has been calling correction a personal failure. You are not required to understand every consequence today. You are required to remain present enough to distinguish the old line from the new signal. That distinction is the beginning of stabilization. You are not going insane. You are not failing in the ordinary sense. You are not being punished. Something invisible began before you understood it, and the visible disruption is the evidence that the process has reached the level of your daily life. The gate remains because a passage has been recognized. The former frequency is separating because it can no longer organize the whole of you. What feels like collapse is the first readable stage of correction, and what feels like uncertainty is the space in which a more accurate configuration is learning to hold. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this process has already touched your life. It could be your sleep, your thoughts, your body, your relationships, or the strange sense that reality no longer feels the same. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who is living through a shift they cannot explain. And if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it, subscribe to Arcturian Quantum. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a process already in motion, and this is only the beginning.